They tell you the truth lies in the headlines, but the headlines are a smokescreen. Behind closed doors, away from the cameras, decisions are being made that could alter the balance of power for decades to come. This is not about routine politics, not about familiar debates. This is about a military secret so consequential that if revealed, it could shake the foundations of everything you think you know about America's role in the world. For years, the public has been distracted with talk of budgets, elections, and foreign policy soundbites. Meanwhile, hidden strategies have been developed, systems built, and alliances forged in silence. The scale of what is unfolding is not just military, it is geopolitical, economic, and existential. This is not a plan of defense, but a design for dominance, and its consequences will not remain hidden forever. The question is not whether this secret exists. The question is how long they can keep it from you. What you are about to hear is not speculation, not conspiracy, but the hard reality of choices being made in your name, with your resources, and at your expense. And when this secret comes to light, it will not only challenge what you believe about war and power, it will challenge what you believe about freedom itself. The real power never reveals itself on the surface. It hides behind the curtain, moving silently, shaping outcomes without ever needing recognition. What the public sees is a stage show, political speeches, televised debates, endless promises of safety and prosperity. But behind this theater exists an engine, vast and relentless, designed to control the flow of global events with precision. This hidden engine of power is not built on the principles of defense that people are told it represents. It is built to dominate, to preempt, to extend influence into every corner of the globe long before conflict is declared. To understand it, you cannot look at what is announced, you must look at what is concealed. The largest military budgets in history are explained away as security measures, but in reality, every dollar is fuel for a machine that moves without pause. Entire networks of bases, fleets, and alliances are assembled not for protection but for projection. It is the quiet placement of forces, the steady buildup of presence, the unseen hand ensuring that no nation can move without permission. The world is told these are measures for peace, yet the very existence of such reach ensures that peace is always conditional on obedience to the engine. The brilliance of this system is its invisibility. It does not march openly. It does not announce its true objectives. It disguises itself as necessity, as order, as stability. People are convinced that without it, chaos would reign. But the chaos it claims to prevent is often chaos it creates. Every expansion, every intervention, every secret deal sparks ripples that destabilize, then justify even greater control. It is a self-feeding loop. Create the threat, magnify the fear, then expand the engine under the promise of safety. And while the people debate symptoms, politicians, parties, elections, the root machinery continues unchecked, drawing strength from ignorance. This hidden engine thrives on timing. It knows when to strike, when to hold, when to whisper in silence. It has patience measured not in years but in generations. Where the public reacts to headlines, it calculates in decades. This is why it always seems one step ahead, why events often feel prearranged, why the outcomes of conflicts are predictable long before they occur. It is not luck or coincidence. It is the product of a design that runs deeper than ordinary perception allows. Consider the vast network of influence stretched across continents. Entire regions are mapped not for defense, but for access, resources, trade routes, positions of leverage. No agreement is accidental. Once the engine moves into place, it rarely retreats, and every step is justified under noble language: humanitarian aid, protection of allies, defense of freedom. Yet the truth is simpler and far colder. It is about securing dominance so complete that no rival can challenge it without being suffocated before the battle even begins. The deception lies in how this power is sold. Citizens are told their sacrifices fund peace, their taxes ensure safety, their votes shape policy. But these beliefs are illusions designed to maintain compliance. In reality, the citizens are the fuel feeding a machine that does not answer to them. Their sons and daughters are sent into conflicts without clear purpose. Their resources are drained into projects that serve interests far removed from their daily lives. They are told they are part of a collective defense, when in truth they are simply maintaining the hidden engine of power that will outlive them. The cost is not just financial or military, it is psychological. When a population is conditioned to see this machinery as natural, as inevitable, they stop questioning its purpose. They accept its presence as a law of nature, like gravity or the passage of time. And once that acceptance is secured, the engine can operate with near total freedom. Obedience becomes instinct, silence becomes habit, and resistance becomes unthinkable. That is the true brilliance of this design. It enslaves not through chains, but through perception. Yet for all its silence, its reach, its disguise as the hidden engine of power carries within it a weakness. It is built on the assumption that people will never see it clearly. It depends on shadows, on distraction, on convincing the world to stare at the surface while it works beneath. But if the veil is lifted, if enough people see the machinery for what it is, then its control begins to erode. Awareness is the one force it cannot fully contain because awareness spreads faster than secrecy can suppress. The truth, then, is that the hidden engine is not invincible, it is vulnerable to exposure. That is why so much effort is poured into narratives, into controlling the flow of information, into dismissing questions as conspiracy or dissent. The greatest fear of the machine is not foreign adversaries, it is the awakening of the very people it depends on. When the engine is no longer hidden, when the public sees beyond the illusion of defense, the very legitimacy of its existence collapses, and that is why this moment matters, because the engine still moves, still builds, still calculates its path toward total dominance. But with every revelation, with every question asked, with every illusion shattered, its grip weakens. What is at stake is not just the balance of power, it is the truth itself. If the people remain blind, the engine will run unchallenged. If they awaken, the hidden engine of power will face the one enemy it cannot control, the will of those who refuse to be deceived. Power does not always arrive with banners, parades, or open declarations. The most dangerous advances are the ones that slip into place unnoticed, step by step, until the world suddenly realizes the balance has already shifted. This is the nature of silent expansion. It does not announce itself with sudden invasions or loud proclamations. It unfolds in gradual moves that appear harmless, even necessary, until the network is woven so tightly it cannot be undone. What makes this process so effective is not its speed, but its subtlety. While most people look for dramatic events, the real transformation takes place quietly in the background while attention is diverted elsewhere. Silent expansion begins with presence, a base here, a training exercise there, an agreement with one government framed as partnership. Each move seems small, almost forgettable. But when pieced together, they form a web of influence stretching across continents. The beauty of this strategy lies in how unthreatening it appears at first glance. A military unit on foreign soil is explained as a gesture of cooperation. A fleet stationed near contested waters is justified as protection. A treaty signed under the guise of defense is accepted as normal diplomacy. Yet behind every step is a design, not of defense, but a reach that extends silently until the map itself reflects a dominance that few ever agreed to but all must endure. The silence is intentional. Dramatic moves attract resistance. Quiet ones breed acceptance. By advancing in shadows, expansion becomes normalized. Citizens grow used to the idea their forces stationed far from home, used to news of new commitments, used to endless justifications about security. Over time, what once would have provoked outrage becomes ordinary. And that is the true danger, not the strength of the expansion itself, but the erosion of resistance to it. When people stop questioning, when silence becomes habit, the expansion has already succeeded. What makes this process powerful is how it redefines borders without formally redrawing them. Nations technically remain sovereign, yet their decisions are shaped by the silent presence of foreign forces. Leaders claim independence, but behind their choices are the pressures of alliances, agreements, and dependencies carefully built through years of quiet maneuvering. Whole regions begin to orbit a power that never declared ownership yet holds control in practice. This is not conquest in the old sense of the word. It is conquest of perception, of influence, of choice, and it is far more enduring than any victory won by open war. The method thrives because it disguises itself as stability. Who could object to joint exercises? Who could refuse assistance in modernizing defenses? Who could say no to promises of security against future threats? Each move is sold as harmless, but taken together they build a foundation of control. It is the slow tightening of a grip that no one feels until escape is impossible. That is why it is silent, because noise would reveal the intention and silence hides it until the work is complete. The expansion is not only physical, it is also psychological. As generations grow up accustomed to a world shaped by this silent reach, they begin to accept it as natural. Children learn in schools that certain presences are permanent. Citizens hear in the news that their safety depends on distant deployments. Politicians repeat the mantra that these commitments are unavoidable. Over time, the people stop asking whether the expansion is right or wrong. They only argue about how to manage it. And that is how silence becomes the greatest weapon of all. It convinces entire populations that dominance is normal, even necessary. But this quiet reach has consequences. Every new presence stirs local tensions, even when dressed in friendly language. Every alliance forged in silence breeds resentment among those excluded. Every expansion hidden under the cover of cooperation plants seeds of conflict that may not bloom for years, but eventually demand reckoning. Silent expansion is not without cost. It simply delays the day when that cost must be paid, and when it is finally revealed, the price is always higher than anyone expected. The danger lies in how few recognize it while it is happening. Ordinary citizens live their lives unaware of the gradual encirclement. Media outlets speak of cooperation without explaining its true implications. Leaders justify commitments with vague phrases that reveal nothing of the long-term plan. By the time the expansion is clear, it is too late. The positions are secured, the networks built, the dependencies established. To resist then is to fight against a structure already deeply embedded. That is why the silence is so effective. It robs people of the chance to resist before it is too late. And yet the silence itself is fragile. It depends on ignorance, on distraction, on the hope that no one will piece the puzzle together. If the expansion is exposed, if the gradual steps are revealed as part of a larger design, the illusion crumbles. People see not isolated acts of cooperation, but a pattern of control. They see not defense, but dominance. They see not partnership, but submission. And once that realization spreads, the strategy loses its greatest advantage. Silent expansion, then, is not invincible. It is powerful only as long as it remains unseen. Once revealed, it becomes vulnerable to opposition, to outrage, to rejection. That is why secrecy is its shield and why truth is its greatest threat. For the silent march of power across the world is not destiny, it is a choice disguised as inevitability. And the moment people recognize it as a choice, they also recognize their power to refuse it. Every empire hides its price. They parade strength, they speak of security, they promise order, but behind every polished word lies a debt so immense it cannot be measured in currency alone. The cost is scattered across generations, buried in graves, etched into broken families, and carried silently in the minds of those who return from wars no one fully understands. This is the part they never show, the hidden cost that sustains the machinery of power while draining the very lifeblood of the people who are told to believe it is for their own good. The first layer of the cost is flesh and blood. Soldiers sent into battles that were planned long before they enlisted, young men and women whose lives are offered to the design of strategy, not to the defense of home. Their names become statistics, their sacrifices used as symbols, their humanity erased beneath the weight of propaganda. The public is told they died for freedom, yet the freedom they were promised is often traded away in backroom deals that serve interests far removed from their sacrifice. Every coffin draped in a flag is not just the end of a life. It is evidence of a system that feeds on the willingness of ordinary citizens to bear the burden of decisions made in silence. The second layer of the cost is wealth. Trillions are poured into projects hidden under the name of defense, yet few ever stop to ask what is truly being defended. Schools crumble, hospitals strain, communities collapse under poverty, but the machine never lacks funding. The people are told the money ensures their safety, but safety never arrives. Instead, they inherit debt, rising prices, and an economy drained to feed ambitions that do not return anything to those who paid. Every dollar spent on these hidden agendas is stolen from the future of the citizens who fund them without choice. The wealth of nations is funneled into endless expansion, while the wealth of families evaporates into survival. Then comes the cost. No one dares to speak of the erosion of freedom itself. With every secret plan, with every concealed strategy, with every justification for more control, the space for individual liberty shrinks, surveillance grows, restrictions tighten, voices are silenced in the name of national interest. The people are told it is temporary, that once the danger passes, freedoms will return. But danger never passes, because the very system thrives on its permanence. Freedom is not stripped away all at once, it is chipped piece by piece until obedience feels natural and questioning feels dangerous. By the time people notice the weight of their chains, they have already been shackled for years. There is also the invisible cost carried by those who return from wars. Those who have seen the truth firsthand, they come back changed, haunted by images and memories the public will never see. They live among society but apart from it, carrying scars that cannot be healed by medals or speeches. Their suffering is hidden, their struggles ignored, because acknowledging them would mean acknowledging the true nature of the wars themselves. They are the living reminders of the price paid in silence, and so they are left to fade into the margins, forgotten by the very system that used them. The cost extends even further, reaching into the global stage. Nations caught in the path of silent expansion are left in ruins, their people displaced, their futures shattered. Cities turned to rubble, economies left dependent, cultures broken by the endless churn of intervention. These lives do not appear in the speeches or the headlines. They are erased, their suffering explained away as necessary collateral. But behind every destroyed home, every grieving parent, every child who grows up without peace, lies the true toll of power pursued without conscience. And perhaps the most devastating cost is time. Decades consumed by conflict, generations raised in fear, progress delayed by the constant diversion of resources into war. Time is the one currency that can never be repaid, yet it is spent as though it is infinite. Children grow up never knowing peace. Parents grow old waiting for promises that never arrive. Societies drift deeper into fatigue. While leaders play their games of strategy, ordinary people lose the only wealth that cannot be replaced: their years, their moments, their chance to live fully. What makes this hidden cost so effective is how it is concealed. Numbers are manipulated, losses are downplayed, sacrifices are glorified. The public is fed narratives of honor and necessity, distracted with symbols that blind them to the truth. They are convinced the price is worth it, even as they feel the weight pressing down on their lives. The tragedy is not just that the cost exists, but that it is willingly accepted by those who pay it. Yet the truth cannot remain hidden forever. Every family touched by loss, every community drained of resources, every voice silenced in the name of security adds weight to the evidence. Slowly, the reality surfaces that the cost is not shared equally. It is carried by the many for the benefit of the few. The people pay with their lives, their wealth, their freedom, while those who design the strategies reap the power, untouched by the suffering they cause. The hidden cost is the greatest deception of all, because it convinces people to sacrifice everything for a dream that never belongs to them. But once revealed, it becomes undeniable. When people see that the promises of security are illusions, that the wealth of nations has been stolen, that the freedom they cherished is shrinking, the illusion collapses. And in that collapse lies the chance for awakening, the realization that the cost does not have to be paid, that the machine only runs as long as people feed it, that silence only continues as long as they choose not to speak. History always arrives at a breaking point. No matter how carefully a design is built, no matter how deeply a plan is concealed, there comes a moment when pressure exceeds control and the balance begins to shift. This is the turning point, the place where the hidden machinery of power collides with reality, where all illusions start to crack, and where the future can no longer be held together by silence alone. Those who build in shadows fear this moment, because it is when their design is forced into the light, and once exposed, no strategy survives unchanged. The turning point is never sudden to those who understand the patterns. It is prepared long in advance by the slow accumulation of consequences. Wars stretched too thin, economies drained too far, lies repeated too often, freedom stripped too deeply. Each piece adds weight until the structure begins to bend. At first, the cracks are invisible, dismissed as minor problems, explained away with empty words. But eventually the cracks widen, and what once seemed unshakable begins to tremble. The moment of collapse always appears sudden to the public, but in truth it is the inevitable result of choices made long before. This moment is dangerous because it carries uncertainty. A turning point is not predictable, it does not follow a calendar. It erupts when the forces of deception, control, and ambition exceed their limits. For the system that built itself on silence and illusions, it is the moment when the silence breaks and the illusions dissolve. And when that happens, the very power that seemed invincible becomes vulnerable to collapse. Every empire, every hidden agenda, every machine of war has faced this reckoning, because the weight of deception always exceeds its ability to contain truth. At the turning point, the hidden plans that shape generations risk exposure. What was once whispered in private rooms becomes shouted in the streets. What was once dismissed as speculation becomes undeniable reality. People begin to connect the dots, to see patterns where before they saw isolated events. They realized the wars were not accidents but designs, that the sacrifices were not noble but exploited, that the freedom they lost was not temporary but permanent. And with that realization, the power of the hidden plan begins to unravel. The architects of control fear this awakening above all else. They prepare endlessly to prevent it, flooding the world with distractions, dividing societies, amplifying fear. They know that once people see clearly, they cannot be forced back into blindness. A population that understands the truth is far more dangerous to the system than any rival nation or armed rebellion. Awareness spreads like fire, and once the first sparks ignite, it cannot be easily extinguished. That is why the turning point is both feared and fought against, but it is also inevitable because lies cannot hold forever. This moment also carries a deeper meaning. It is not only about systems collapsing, but about individuals awakening. Each person must face the question, do I accept the illusions or do I step into the truth? No matter how heavy it is, the turning point demands courage, because truth is never easy. It strips away comforting narratives and exposes the raw reality of manipulation, exploitation, and betrayal. Yet it is only by facing that reality that people can begin to take back control of their future. The turning point is not just political, it is personal. When nations reach this threshold, the consequences ripple across the world. Rivals who were once contained find opportunities to rise. Allies who were once loyal begin to question their commitments. Citizens who were once obedient begin to resist. The balance of power shifts, sometimes gradually, sometimes violently, but always decisively. This is why turning points are both dangerous and transformative. They open the door to chaos, but also to renewal. They tear down illusions, but in their place they offer the possibility of building something real. What matters most in these moments is choice. Systems collapse, but people decide whether they will simply replace one illusion with another, or whether they will finally reject the machinery of control altogether. The turning point is not destiny, it is opportunity. It is the rare moment when the hidden loses its grip, when truth gains strength, and when the collective will of the people has the power to shape what comes next. Whether that opportunity is seized or wasted defines the course of history for generations to come. Those who understand this moment know it is not to be feared but embraced. Fear paralyzes, but awareness empowers. The breaking of illusions is painful, but it is also liberation. The turning point strips away the lies that bind societies and reveals the possibility of a future not dictated by secrecy and manipulation. It is a chance to reclaim what was lost: freedom, dignity, self-determination. But it requires vigilance, because those who built the system will fight desperately to preserve it even as it crumbles. The signs of this shift are already visible. The cost has grown too high, the lies too thin, the reach too vast to remain hidden. Whispers are becoming questions, questions are becoming voices, voices are becoming movements. And once the momentum builds, the turning point becomes unstoppable. What was once concealed becomes undeniable, and the world stands on the edge of transformation. The hidden engine of power can manipulate, it can deceive, it can dominate, but it cannot prevent the arrival of the turning point. That moment always comes, and when it does, the illusions vanish, the silence shatters, and the people are faced with the truth they were never meant to see. It is in that truth that the path forward is found, not in obedience, but in awakening, not in fear, but in courage. The turning point is not the end, it is the beginning of a future no longer bound by lies. There comes a moment when all illusions collapse, when silence no longer shields the truth, when the weight of deception becomes unbearable. That moment is the final awakening. It is the point where people can no longer pretend not to see, no longer hide in the comfort of denial, no longer trade freedom for the illusion of safety. The awakening is not gentle. It does not arrive with calm explanations. It crashes through lies like a storm, forcing eyes open whether they are ready or not. It is painful, because truth always is, but it is also liberating, because once seen it cannot be unseen. The final awakening begins within the individual. It starts as a whisper, a quiet recognition that something is wrong, that the story being told does not align with the reality being lived. For some, it is sparked by loss; for others, by betrayal; for many, by the realization that their sacrifices have been consumed by a system that gives nothing in return. The whisper grows into doubt, the doubt into questioning, the questioning into a demand for answers. This is the birth of awakening, and once it begins, it spreads. At first, awakening isolates. Those who see the truth often feel alone, surrounded by a sea of people still asleep. They are ridiculed, dismissed, silenced. But truth has a way of resonating, of finding its way into the minds of others who are quietly wondering the same things. The cracks in the illusion widen as more begin to ask the forbidden questions. Why are these wars endless? Where does the wealth go? Who truly benefits from these sacrifices? Why are freedoms shrinking while power grows? These questions are dangerous because they strip away the mask. They reveal that what has been accepted as natural is in fact manufactured. The awakening spreads not because it is forced, but because it speaks to a reality that everyone feels, even if they cannot yet articulate it. People feel the weight of rising costs, the fatigue of endless conflict, the emptiness of promises never fulfilled. Deep down, they know something is wrong. Awakening simply gives words to what they already feel, and once those words are spoken, the silence can never fully return. This final stage is the one the system fears most, because once awareness becomes collective, control begins to slip away. Propaganda loses its power, fear loses its grip, obedience loses its hold. People no longer accept the narrative without question. They demand proof, they demand accountability, they demand truth. And the moment they demand truth, the deception begins to unravel. The entire machinery of control depends on compliance, and awakening is the death of compliance. The final awakening is not without danger. Systems built on lies do not surrender easily. They respond with greater force, greater fear, greater attempts to divide and silence. They will pit people against each other, flood the air with distractions, even invent new crises to maintain control. But none of it stops the tide, because once people see the truth, they cannot be blinded again. The harder the system fights to preserve its illusion, the more obvious its desperation becomes, and the more people awaken to its reality. This moment is not just political, it is spiritual. It forces people to confront what they truly value: comfort or freedom, obedience or dignity, survival or truth. Awakening strips away illusions of identity, tribe, and party, leaving only the raw question of humanity itself. Do you wish to live as a subject of control or as a free being who accepts the risks of freedom? That is the choice. The final awakening is not simply about exposing a hidden plan, it is about redefining what it means to live. And with awakening comes responsibility. To see the truth is not enough, it must be acted upon. Awareness must turn into courage, courage into resistance, resistance into transformation. Each person who awakens carries a weight, not just for themselves, but for the generations that follow. The lies endured by the past cannot be undone, but the future is not yet written. Awakening gives the power to write it differently, to build not on manipulation, but on transparency, not on fear, but on strength, not on silence, but on truth. The final awakening is not a single event. It is a wave. It begins quietly, grows steadily, and then surges until it can no longer be contained. Those who resist it will cling to the wreckage of illusions, but those who embrace it will shape the next era. And this is why it matters, because history belongs not to the deceivers who cling to power, but to the awakened who refuse to live in chains. The awakening is not merely a revelation, it is a revolution of perception, and from it, everything changes. When enough people awaken, the hidden plans lose their grip, the wars lose their justification, the sacrifices lose their disguise. The wealth stops flowing into the hands of the few. The system built on silence begins to collapse under the weight of voices that will no longer be quiet. This is the power of awakening. It does not need armies or weapons. It only needs people who refuse to be deceived. And though it comes with pain, though it demands courage, though it carries risks, it is the only path forward. Without awakening, the cycle continues: wars without end, costs without limit, freedoms without return. With awakening, the cycle breaks, and for the first time in generations, the possibility of true freedom appears. This is the moment everything shifts, the point of no return, the truth that cannot be silenced. The final awakening is not coming. It is already here, rising in whispers, breaking through lies,